Hello students, today we will be talking about comprehensive national power and particularly its transition from national power to comprehensive national power. We will be proceeding like this. First we will be talking about the background, then we will understand what is power, then we will discuss about the characteristics of power, and then we will understand power as capability, and then what is the problem or the drawbacks associated with this understanding of power as capability. So let us start our discussion with the background. If sovereignty defines what states are in the international system, power determines what they are capable of doing. So if you look at the discussion in sovereignty, you will find that sovereignty is considered as one of the primary element of the state, without which the state can't be a state. And similarly, international politics is also understood the main area where the states are considered as the main actors. They always engage in some sort of activities, and for that engagement they need power, they need capability. So power decides what you are capable of doing and what you are not. In international relations, it is not always power itself, but its distribution among actors in international society that proves to be most interesting. So in a way, you can understand this in a much better way. So it is not actually the power, rather the distribution of power that becomes very interesting when you think of international politics. States are critical actors because they have power, which is the ability not only to influence others but also to control the outcome, to produce results that would not have been occurred naturally. So when you define power, when you understand power, so it is not only just to influence others, but also to control the outcome, what you exactly wanted and whether you have achieved that or not. States have power with respect to each other and also with respect to actors within the state. So you have power domestically, you have the power internationally because you are dealing with other actors, and it is the capability factor, it is the power factor that decides whether you will be able to achieve your foreign policy objectives or not. All theoretical perspectives acknowledge the importance of power, but each pays attention to different types of power. So all theoretical formulations, you will find that they are talking of power, but basically they talk of different kinds of power, different types of power. Realists, liberals and the radicals all conceptualize power in materialistic lenses. Realists and radicals primarily in natural and tangible sources, whereas liberals pay attention to intangible sources of power. So there are two sources of power, one is tangible, one is visible, the other is intangible or not clearly visible. So basically the radicals and realists, they talk about tangible elements of power, and the liberals talk about the intangible sources of power. Constructivists emphasize the non-material sources of power found in the power of ideas, one of the intangible sources. So similarly, the constructivists, they also talk about the power of ideas, which is again an intangible elements of power. All agree that power is multidimensional, dynamic and situational. So that even if there are differences between different theories, but all theories highlight this aspect that power is a multidimensional, dynamic and situational factor. Then the question is, what is power? What are its different attributes, and how and to what extent has the nature of power changed over a period of few years? So now the most interesting question is, what is power? What are its attributes? How and to what extent has the nature of power changed over the last few decades? So these are the three questions which we will be discussing in our discussion on national and comprehensive national power. So let us first understand what is power all about. Power in its broadest sense is the ability to influence the outcome of events in the sense of having the power to do something. So basically power is understood as capability, power is understood as the power to do something. In global politics, this includes the ability of a country to conduct its own affairs without the interference of other countries, and in that way it is very close to autonomy, that you decide what you have to do, you decide how you have to do, you do not allow others to interfere in this autonomy of yours. In this way, power can be understood in terms of capability, that is, as an attribute, something that states and other actors should possess. However, power is usually thought of as a relationship, that is, the ability to influence the behavior of others in a manner not of their choosing. So, there are other ways of understanding power. So, it is not just about capability, it is also about relationship. That is particularly to understand that it is the ability to influence the behavior of others. They may not be interested to do that, but you have the ability to influence their behavior, and in that way power is understood as the power over others or exercise of influence over other actors. So, basically power is capability, similarly power is also about influence. Power can therefore be said to be exercised when A gets B to do something that B would otherwise not do. So, the basic issue is other is not interested to do, but if you are powerful they will do it because they know that you are powerful, you can harm them, you can force them to do that. Distinction have nevertheless been made between potential and actual power, relational and structural power, that is the ability to control the political agenda and shape how the things are done, national power and comprehensive national power, and also hard and soft power. So, these are the distinctions that we will discuss. There are also debates about the changing nature of power, how the power is changing, and what are the key factors that is responsible for this changing nature of power. So, let us now discuss about the characteristics of power. So far we understood in our discussion on the meaning of power. So there are certain characteristics of power, so that would again help us for a better understanding of power. First, power is relational. When we say India is a powerful country, we are particularly focusing or comparing India's power with that of other countries. Power is also primarily a means, not an end. Basically the purpose is to defend, to maximize your interest of states. So, power accumulation is not the end, or the offensive realists were arguing, rather power is the means to an end, because it is through the power you can achieve your foreign policy goals. Power is also based on perception, what others are thinking about you, what other people are thinking about you, that is again considered nowadays very important, and if they think positive of you, if they think good of you, then definitely that adds your chances of being a powerful country. Power is also multidimensional. It's military power, it is economic power, it's cultural, psychological and other influence. So, power is not just about military power, rather it's a multidimensional concept. Power can also be institutionalized. If you look at the UN Security Council, you will find that these are the 5 victorious countries in the Second World War, and those who tried to sanctify their hegemony through the institutionalization of their veto power. They are permanent members of the UN Security Council. So, in that way power can be institutionalized. Let us understand power as a capability. The traditional approach to power in international politics is to treat it in terms of capability. So, mostly the traditional understanding of power is capability, and that is why we talk of the elements of power, the major attributes of power. Power is therefore understood as an attribute or position. Such an approach has, for instance, been reflected in the attempts to list the elements or components of national power. If you look at any book on international politics, you will find the major discussion is about military power and how the various components or elements are to that military power or national power. The most significant of these usually include geography, per capita wealth, natural resources, size of its population, military capability and so on. So, when you think power as a capability, you are talking of national power in terms of the elements like geography or maybe per capita income or natural resources. A thorough analysis of the capabilities available to a state is therefore very useful, particularly for 2 important purposes. First, determining its place in the international system in terms of its hierarchical position, such as great powers, superpowers, middle powers, regional powers and so on. So when you take the capability, understanding of power or power as capability, then you are talking of the relative position, power position of the state in the international system. They may be understood as superpower, middle power, great power, world power, like this. Secondly, when you focus on power as capability, it is basically helps us to understand what actually the state might realistically aspire and achieve at the minimum, relying only on its own capability within the confines of self-help framework. So when the realists are talking of self-help, so particularly they are talking of this kind of power that if you possess this capability, then you know what you can achieve and you know what you can't achieve. Essentially, this capability analysis is about assessing the elements of national power. So when we understand power as capability, so basically we highlight and assess the elements of national power, or what are the attributes that adds to the national power of a country or a nation state. So now let us discuss about the elements of power, or different elements of power, and within that different elements, let us first focus on the natural sources of power, starting with geography. Geographic size and position were the natural sources of power international relations theorists recognize first. So most of the earlier theories of international relations, they understood that geography is a very important factor that decides your power, that determines your power. A large geographical size gives a state automatic power potential. So if you are geographically large, like Russia, like India, like China, so automatically you are a powerful country, or you have the potential to become a powerful country. Beneficial geographical features includes access to the sea for trading and military purposes, and the United Kingdom can be a best example for this. A temperate climate away from earthquake zones and areas where violent tropical storms are frequent, that can again be an important element of power. If you take the example of Russia, you will find that it's living in a, although not in a very temperate climate, but it lives at least in a zone that is earthquake free zone, and it's not badly affected by tropical storms. Navigable rivers for transport, trade and energy production, hydroelectricity power is again considered as an important part of geography, and India can be the best example. Then arable land of farming, how much land is actually available for farming, like the United States, that again adds to your national power. Access to mineral and energy resources such as coal, oil and gas, like Australia. So so geography is an important factor for your power position, and these factors within the geographical factor are again important. So if you have a good geography with a good size, and if you have beneficial features like access to the sea, or climate is moderate, and you have navigable rivers for transport, for trade, and you have also large areas available for farming, and access to different kind of minerals and resources, definitely that adds to your power potential. Second natural sources of power is the natural resources. Geographic power potential is magnified or constrained by natural resources, a second source of natural power. So if you have a geography and you don't have natural resources, so it cannot add to your power position. So in a way, availability of natural resources is sometimes magnifies or sometimes constrain the state power. Controlling a large geographic expanse is not a positive ingredient of power unless and until expanse contains natural resources such as petroleum, different kinds of minerals, different kinds of energy resources, as we have seen in the case of Kuwait, Qatar and UAE, which are geographically very small but have crucial natural resources. They have great power potential than it is demanded by the size. So these small countries, although geographical they are very small, but they have a lots of petroleum and natural gas that adds to their power potential. So geography is not necessarily important for your national power if you don't have precious natural resources. That is the point. States need oil and are ready to pay dearly for it, and even go to war if those resources are not available to them or denied to them. States that have much valuable natural resources, regardless of their geographical size, wield power over the states that do not. So, if you possess precious natural resources, that is much more important than just with a large geographical size if natural resources are not there. Countries like the United States, Russia and South Africa exert vast power potential because of their diverse natural resources like oil, copper, bauxites, gold and silver. Russia has in fact leveraged its power from its control of natural resources to influence political outcomes in other countries. As you can see, because of its significant natural resources like petroleum, like other important natural resources, it has in a way bypassed the Western sanctions by supplying those resources to countries like India and China. So if you have precious natural resources, so you can influence the other countries' foreign policies. China, which supplies over 95% of the demand for so-called rare earth minerals, essential in high-tech manufacturing, has been able to use its monopoly to deny access for political purposes and drive up the prices. So if you possess rare earth minerals, definitely, and if you possess 95% of the rare earth minerals, that is again you can use for selective purposes for influencing the foreign policy position of other countries. Even natural resource based power may have its own limits. Of course, having a sought after resource may prove a liability, making states targets for aggressive actions, as we have seen in case of Kuwait, which it learned in 1990 when Saddam Hussein attacked it. Nor does the absence of natural resources mean that the state has no power potential. As we can see in case of Japan, it is a very small country geographically, but because it is technologically very superior, very good, so it has overcome its a limited geographical size and it has emerged as one of the world's most important economic power. So that explains that even if you have a small geography and your population is industrious, it is laborious, you have high technology, you can overcome the limitation of natural resources. The third important factor is population. Population is a third natural source of power. Sizable populations such as those of India, also India boasts as the world's youngest country. China, United States, Indonesia, Brazil and Russia automatically give power potential and often great power status. So population is now considered as a very important factor for a country's national power, because if you have a young population, you have industrious population, you have educated population, so definitely that adds to your power potential. Although a large population produces a variety of goods and services, characteristics of that population such as health status, age distribution, level of social services may magnify or constrain state power. So these are only if you have large population, that doesn't add to your power position unless they are skilled, they are highly educated, like the countries such as Switzerland, Norway, Australia and Singapore, because if you have skilled population, they can be very good for your national power, because ultimately they will contribute for your economic development, they will contribute for your social development and political development. So it's not just the size of the population, rather the quality of population that matters a lot, as we can see in case of Switzerland, Norway and Australia. States with large but relatively poor population can exercise less power. So if you have very small number of populations like Maldives or Bhutan, so you do not have actually more power potential. That is again the case. States with a declining population like Russia or a rapidly aging one such as South Korea, Japan, Germany and even China have already started suffering from a decline in this natural source of power. So countries like Japan, like Germany, like South Korea, like UK, like nowadays in China, you find more and more population, they are aging, and that adds to the state's burden. So you should not just have population, it should be qualitatively superior population, superior people. That is the argument. Both tangible and intangible sources of power can affect the degree to which these natural sources of power potential are translated into actual power. So if you have power or if you have the potential but you don't translate those into actual power, there is no point. These sources are used to enhance, modify or constrain the power of a nation. So, natural resources like population, like geography, so they are all important, but the question is how you translate these nature gifted resources into actual power, that is the question. Now, let us discuss about the tangible sources of power. Among the tangible sources of power, industrial development, economic diversification, level of infrastructure and characteristics of the military are all important, and they are critical for a country's national power. With an advanced industrial capacity like Japan or like Germany, the advantages and disadvantages of geography can diminish to a large extent. Air travel, for example, makes geographic expanse less of a barrier to commerce, yet at the same time makes even large states militarily vulnerable, like we have seen in case of Russia. So, if the size of the territory is really big, it really makes it challenging for you to secure your border. Similarly, industrialization modifies the importance of population too. For many, especially in the realist school, power in international politics boil down to military capacity, as we have already discussed that they consider military security, military capability are the most important factor for any state. Realists, for example, have traditionally favored a basic force model for power on the grounds that military capacity both enables a country to protect its interest and people from external aggression and to pursue its interest abroad through conquest and expansion. So, if you have military security, you can help your country to counter war, to counter others' aggression, and you can protect your people in a much better way. Key factors are therefore the size of the armed forces, their effectiveness in terms of moral, training, discipline and leadership, and also their access to the most advanced weaponry system and equipment. So, if you have military capability, that is fine, but these factors are also important. So, nowadays number is not important, rather the moral of the soldiers, training, discipline, leadership and whether they have access to the most advanced weapon systems in the world, these are much more important. Economic development is also an important tangible sources of power. States' weight in international relations is closely linked to their wealth and economic resources. This applies in part because economic development underpins military capacity, as wealth enables states to develop large armies, acquire modern weapons and wage costly or long wars. So, if you are economically capable, economically powerful, so you can acquire much better advanced nuclear weapons, you can have a nuclear program, you can purchase costly submarines, you can secure your borders, you can use it also as a tool for influencing others' behavior. So, that is why economic development is considered as an important factor for national power. Modern technology like artificial intelligence, big data, electric vehicles, chips, green and clean technologies, these are all important technologies nowadays, and an advanced industrial base also gives states political leverage in relation to other countries. So, if you are good in technology like artificial intelligence or big data or electrical vehicles, nowadays these are all demanded technologies. So, if you have the advantage of this kind of advanced technologies, you can use those technologies for better relationship or influencing other countries' behavior. Now, let us talk about the intangible sources of power. Intangible power sources like national image, quality of the government, public support, leadership and moral may be considered as intangible ones, because we can't simply evaluate this kind of elements. So, that is why they are called intangible sources of power. People within states have images of their own state's power potential, such as images that translate it into intangible power ingredients. So, how you think about your leadership, how you think about your president or prime minister, this kind of understanding, this kind of perception about your leader. So, that is again considered as very important for national power. The perception by others states of public support and cohesion is another intangible sources of power. So how other countries perceive you, how they understand you, that is again an important factor that adds to your power position. India's power was magnified during the leadership of Pandit Nehru, Mrs. Gandhi, or even the current Prime Minister Mr. Narendra Modi, when they got unprecedented public support for their policies on China and Pakistan. When China launched a war in 1962, so Nehru got widespread support, even if many people criticize his China policy. But when the war began, there was a strong public support for him for dealing with China. Similarly, when Mrs. Gandhi intervened on the question of East Pakistan, which was made as Bangladesh, she also got wide support from the people of India. Similarly, the present Prime Minister is also very popular because for most of his foreign policy initiatives, he gets a widespread support from within the country and also sometimes from outside the country. When the public support is absent, particularly in democracies, the power potential of state diminishes. You can just imagine the case of United States when it was involved in the Vietnam War. There was a lot of opposition domestically, and that was one of the reasons why it decided to withdraw from Vietnam. So the point is if you don't get proper public support, that may affect or that may undermine your military effectiveness. That is the lesson of USA from the Vietnam experience. Leadership is another source of intangible power. Visionary and charismatic leaders such as Gandhi, Bismarck or Churchill were able to augment the power potential of their states by taking bold initiatives. So if you have a charismatic leader, if you have a strong visionary leader, so definitely that adds to your power position, because you get good impression from others, that you get good perception of others because your leaders are popular. When Nehru was Prime Minister, when Gandhi was the leader of India's freedom movement, or when Indira Gandhi was the leader, or even the current Prime Minister, they have all got good public support from other countries, particularly from the people of other countries. Poor leaders, those who loot public resources and abuse the public trust, diminish their state capacity. So if you have a very unpopular leader, those who are looting the state treasury, those who are thinking about their family, their own benefit, they will not get any public support, as we can see in case of many authoritarian and totalitarian countries. So that means intangible sources of power such as the kind of national image, quality of the government, public support, leadership, moral, these are all important issues that determines a country's power potential. Now let us discuss about the drawbacks of understanding power as a capability. However, power capabilities has a number of drawbacks, making it as an unreliable means of determining the outcome of events. So you have the potential, but that doesn't mean this potential is translated into actual power. The often quoted example of Vietnam War helps to illustrate this point. The USA failed to prevail in Vietnam despite enjoying massive economic, technological and military superiority over North Vietnam, or even in Afghanistan. You can find the best example that even if you have the potential, even if you are the militarily most advanced country, if you are the producer of largest number of nuclear bombs, you have to face defeat, as we can see in case of USA in Vietnam or in Afghanistan or even Iraq. And same is the situation with Russia now. Although it possesses large number of nuclear weapons, but still it has not attained military victory against Ukraine. So the point is you have the potential, but that doesn't actually translate into power. Arc-based capabilities define potential or latent power rather than the actual power, and translating a capability into a genuine political asset may be difficult and perhaps impossible. This applies for a number of reasons. So there are a number of reasons that your power as the capability, if it is not translated into actual power, there are so many problems with this, and there are so many numbers for this. So if you have the capability, but it is not translated into actual power, so that doesn't make any sense. But there are a number of reasons why we can say this. The relative importance of the attributes of power is a matter of uncertainty and debate. Is a large population more significant than geographical size? Is economic power more important than the military power? So these are the questions. You have the population, but that doesn't add to your power if they are unskilled, if they are violent, if they are not properly educated. Similarly, you can argue that whether military power is important or economic power is important nowadays. You see countries like Pakistan, like North Korea, those who are militarily powerful, but they are almost economically in starvation. So the point is, despite having good military capability, they are struggling day and night for economic resources, for economic regions. So the point is that adds to your uncertainty, because you cannot actually translate those potential elements into actual power. Some elements of national power may be less beneficial than what they appear. For example, a highly educated population may limit the state's ability to wage or sustain warfare. And similarly, natural resources may hamper your economic growth, as is the so-called paradox of plenty. So even if you have natural resources, if you don't have technology, if you don't have good scientific base, it doesn't make any sense. You have to export them to other countries. So that doesn't actually add to your power position. Subjective factors may be as significant as quantifiable objective factors. These include the will and resolve of the armed forces and what can be called as national morale. So how you quantify these kind of intangible factors, these kind of intangible elements, that is again a problem. Strategy and leadership may also be decisive, allowing for instance weaker actors to prevail over stronger ones in the so-called asymmetrical wars, as the example of terrorism and insurgency proves. Countries like Vietnam, they were not fighting a direct war against the American soldiers, but that shows. And even at present, many countries you will find terrorists, they don't bother about their own death, there is suicide terrorism. So how you deter those forces, those who are not even wishing to live, or even they want to die? So you have no deterrence for this kind of activities. So that is the problem with the capability element of national power. It may also be possible to translate resources or capacities into genuine political efficacy in particular circumstances. If you have nuclear weapons, it serves a particular context, it doesn't stop terrorist attack against you. So that is again a problem with the capability approach to power. Power is dynamic and ever changing, meaning that power relations are never fixed or given. So today you are powerful, it doesn't mean that tomorrow you will remain powerful. We have seen that in case of France and United Kingdom, they were all powerful countries, but because of Second World War, they lost their great power potential, they lost their great power status. So they have even been taken over by countries like India economically. So the issue is power is not a fixed concept, it's a very dynamic concept, and we have to understand this when we discuss about the capability factor as an element of national power. So we will continue our discussion on national power. So till then, thank you for your patient hearing.